Welcome to Not Safe for Work Romance, where authors take you behind the scenes in our little corner of the romance writing world. I'm Shane Starrett.
And I'm Eris Adderley, and we write the kind of books that embarrass you in front of your relatives.
Our episode tonight, Who We Are, where we'll be talking about how Eris and I started our journey as authors and what makes us want to write the dirty, filthy books we do.
Does not fail to make me laugh, Shane.
Good. That's the intention. So listen, who we are. I mean, obviously, that's a subject that I think the two of us could go on for hours, and we're not going to bore our audience by doing that. But before we get to that, I do have one question for you, because it's something that I think our audience will want to know the same way that I wanted to know.
He's coming for me with this. I don't know what it is. He's coming for me.
I have no idea what you're talking about. This is a very serious question, and I would really appreciate if you would give it the gravitas that it deserves. And it's this.
I know your tones, man.
Why do you insist on pronouncing your name wrong?
This guy, said.
You say Eris.
Correct.
It is Eris. It's so simple. Just say it for me one time.
In what universe?
Just one. For me and for our audience, just say it one time.
Okay, Shane Starrett.
Oh, whoa.
Now it's on. Now the gloves are off.
Starrett is a well-recognized tool company in name.
Is it?
It is.
Oh, okay. It's been a long year since I worked at a place that sold tools.
Eris is what you call someone who's like Abigail Folger or Patty Hearst. They're like those people who, inherited something, a big company, or came from a big family like that. Eris is that kind of person. Eris, I mean, it just flows off the tongue. And I honest to God, it has flabbergasted me for years now why you keep insisting on using the wrong
Do you want an honest answer to why I pronounce it that way?
Okay.
Like a for real answer?
Yeah, exactly. Tell me, because the joke here is, of course, is that when we first met and we hadn't really actually spoken to each other, everything was through messaging and text and whatnot. I always pronounced your name Eris. And then the first time that we actually spoke and I said Eris, you said, no, Eris. And then it became a thing for me to mispronounce it, not intentionally mispronouncing it, to try to be funny like I was a moment ago. No, I could not wrap my brain around that pronunciation.
It's like once you've carved a line with your X-Acto knife in the thing, you can't not, it just keeps going in there. Like you just can't.
Yep. And that's exactly what it was. And I'm only now finally starting to get to the point where I can pronounce it most of the time correctly. So yeah, please tell us exactly what is the story behind that pronunciation.
Without a huge backstory, one of my other things that I'm involved in my universe is astrology. And in 2006, I think it was, when they discovered the planet Eris, originally they had some number, and then for a brief time they were calling it Xena, like literally Xena, warrior princess. Okay. And then at some point they settled on Eris, which is the goddess of discord and strife, the Greek goddess. And without getting into a bunch of nonsense, I'm really involved. I'm super obsessed with that. The discovery of that planet did actually throw everything into kind of chaos when it was discovered, because that's the one that made astronomers and people who look at how space works basically start to reconsider what is the definition of what's technically a planet. That's where the whole debate got sparked, and they decided Pluto is only a planetoid and all that stuff. So even the planet Eris is a maker of trouble and chaos. But anyway, in that world of astrologers, that's how I heard everybody else saying it Eris, and I just assumed all these astrologers would know, so I just rolled with them.
Not me.
I just also assumed the other Greek gods that have similar, like the Aphrodite's son Eros. I've always heard it Eros, not Eros, so I would assume those two things are pronounced in a similar way.
But Euripides,
But that's got a U after it.
Oh, okay, true.
That's that's a diphthong.
Damn it!
Y'all, everybody Google diphthong now.
Yeah,
which is a great word. I love the word diphthong. Like, it's just fantastic.
I thought for a second there I was going to be able to hang you up, but no, you're right. It's not.
I had way too many Greek names in some of my books, my friend.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I'm willing to admit if someone who is a scholar of how to pronounce Greek things comes to me and they say it's Eris, I will admit that I am wrong, because I had to look up some names that were in some of my Greek themed books and heard them pronounced, and I was like, well, I've not been saying that correctly for 3 years, so I'm willing to admit if I'm wrong.
Okay. All right.
Anyway.
Well, I had to take the opportunity to bust your chops about that, because, like I said, for a while there, it was definitely this, no, not Eris.
It's hard once you start saying something one way to turn it around. It really is.
I know. It is. So listen, our subject tonight is who we are. And as we have determined, I will be speaking to you first. So tell me, who are you? Let's talk about your early life. Let's say pre-author. Where are you from? Are you willing to share that with our audience?
That's fine. Let me get on my button-tufted couch and talk to my therapist here. I just like saying button-tufted. Let's see here. Yes, I grew up in Southern California, which is why, as much as I try, I apologize ahead of time, I will not be able to stop saying the word like. It's in there. It's part of the vernacular. I can't stop. I've tried. And probably dude will show up in there quite a bit.
Oh, okay. So you are, in fact, going to be going for the Valley Girl thing. You're just
Yes, the entire vapid. That's definitely the persona I am cultivating.
All right.
I'm working on it.
That's not true at all. You go for it. You go for it tonight. If that's who you want to be, we are here to support you. So you're from Southern California.
Yes.
And you grew up here, born here?
Yes, I was born there. I'm not getting too specific about cities and stuff, but yes, I was born there. I lived there most of my growing up, I guess, until I moved to Arizona briefly when I was in my mid-early 20s.
Okay.
Lived there a couple years, got a promotion at work, and the promotion happened to be back in Southern California. So back I went and was there for another 10 years. And now I'm back in Arizona for some reason.
I was just going to say, that's a perfect segue, because you're no longer in Southern California, are you?
Right. Yeah, I'm in Arizona again.
Okay. And you've lived there for a number of years?
Yeah, about 3 years at this point, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was longer than that. I thought you'd been living in Arizona for a longer period of time. But it's only been 3 years.
Yep, 3 years.
Okay, so this is, I know, putting you on the spot. Do you prefer Arizona over Southern California? And are you willing to admit one?
Let's put it this way. If I made a whole heck of if I had household name author money, you know what I'm saying? If I made a whole heck of a lot more money than I do, I would probably move back to SoCal in a heartbeat.
Okay.
However, that is the reason that myself and my husband moved out of there, because we could not continue to make it happen. If anybody else, around does not understand how expensive it is, to own a house or what have you in Southern California. And Southern California isn't even the worst. Forget going to the Bay Area or something. Good grief.
Well, right, exactly. There are parts of Southern California that, in theory, aren't that bad.
Right.
It's still nothing like Arizona, Nevada, places like that. The cost of living here is what they call the sunshine tax, and
you're paying to live in paradise. You're paying to live where it's a Mediterranean climate, kind of, I guess. It doesn't snow, it doesn't freeze in the winter. It doesn't get ridiculous hot like it doesn't. I mean, but this year I've seen some temperatures, so I'm not going to act like it never gets hot. But for the most part, you're not spending all summer above 100.
That's right.
I do not live in the part of Arizona where it's like that. I live at high elevation in the middle of nowhere. So
okay, so you have that luxury going for you. I mean, or luxury in the sense of people in Arizona who live, let's say, further south, Tucson, Phoenix, that area where it really gets hot and it stays hot for
yeah, there's no 120 degrees where I live.
Yeah.
There's none of that. I used to live in that. I actually did not hate it. I'm a bit of a lizard. I need a hot rock to lay on to keep my blood temperature up. So I was okay with it, but I know that it's not, it's not everybody's cup of tea to live in that kind of temperature.
Exactly. So one of the questions that came up when we did our AMA, and this was someone who wrote on your Facebook page, was, has your geographical locations that you've lived in, whether it's Southern California or Arizona, had an impact on your writing?
I would say so. I would say in a more, I don't want to say impractical sense, in a more meta sense, if I'm using the word correctly, I'm probably not. It's just an extra bunch of sensory input to kind of add to my little mental library of experiences.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like in Southern California, I did not get to enjoy the mental experience of, I tend to write really late at night, like between midnight and like 2 or 3 a.m. is my prime writing time. Well, here it's dead silent. Like if I have the windows open, there's katydids a little bit. There's an owl if it's the right time of year. You could hear some coyotes maybe. But other than that, it is silent. And that is, I had never had the experience of dead silence growing up in SoCal. There's always something. Even if you live in like a chill suburb, you're still going to hear a cop car somewhere or a siren. You still might hear a helicopter.
Yep.
And the last place I lived, it was downtown in the city. So there was always helicopters and buses and all this stuff. So, I mean, just differences like that, being around different environments, there's different plants and animals to see, all kinds of stuff like that. That affects me just adding to the things that I can draw upon when I'm trying to describe stuff when I'm writing.
Okay.
And in a practical sense, honestly, just the quiet affects my writing just because there's times where I can concentrate more here where before I would not be able to.
Is it more conducive, do you think, to writing?
You'd think that, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
I think I get to about as much as I was before. As a percentage of available time, I probably write about a similar amount.
Okay. Well, one of the things that you just talked about, and it's one of my favorite books by you, which is Bass Ackwards. That locale, you wrote that when you were living in Arizona, correct?
I started it when I was living in California.
Okay.
I started when I was living in California. I'm trying to think. I did finish it when I moved to Arizona, though. There was a pretty big hiatus in the middle. I don't know if I was writing something else. I stopped to edit The Eighth House and get it published, which was that was a big old long production. Okay. It took me 10 months to revise that book. So I didn't stop writing Bass Ackwards for 10 months, but it slowed things down. And then during the process of moving out here, because there was just a nightmarish, selling one house and buying another one at the exact same time in 2 different states, that really put a stop to me being able to work on Bass Ackwards. But yeah, I started it in California. However, as a young person, I had spent a good deal of time in some places in Texas and where my father lives, which, I'm not trying to reveal where all my family lives, but it was somewhere also somewhat rural like that. So I had enough of that kind of environment on my radar to feel okay about writing about it.
All right. See, I did not understand that. For some reason, I had equated in my head that you wrote Bass Ackwards when you were living in Arizona. You'd just moved there. And I thought somehow that might have had an impact on it.
That makes complete sense, actually.
But no, that's interesting, though, that it wasn't just moving from one locale to another that prompted that particular story. The story started when you were living in Southern California and you finished it when you were in Arizona, which I think kind of speaks, a little bit to just the creativity of an author sometimes, that you don't necessarily, your environment can have an impact, but it doesn't necessarily drive the stories or the setting of the stories that you write.
Right. I mean, and I'm, without going, well, I'm sure we'll have a whole podcast about this, but I will say I'm an outliner. I'm a person who comes up with my story ahead of time. So I still had my whole outline. So, I mean, granted, had I been living in Arizona to begin with, maybe I might not have ever thought of that story, might not have ever gotten written, because it was definitely completely outlined before I moved here. I just write really slow, but I do have an outline to start with most of the time. So it existed in the aether in its entirety, just not on paper.
Right. So let's talk about school, other things of that nature. You grew up in Southern California, so you went to school in Southern California, right?
Yeah. I'm like, please don't ask me about my complete lack of education. No.
No. I mean, you're an educated person. I guess.
It's debatable.
Oh, stop! Please stop. Do you have a degree?
I have a 2-year degree.
Okay, so
it took me 5 years to get because I was working full time like a beast the whole time.
Okay.
So it was, and they weren't nothing was online then as far as classes, like you just had to go. So it's like,
right.
And employers did not, they don't care. They're just like, you come to me, you work for me. You right. Figure out your school on your own time. So it just took me a really long time to get, and it's in fine art too, by the way. So it's like the most useless possible 2-year degree you could get. It's just,
I don't know that I would agree with that because you are known not only as an author, but as a tremendously talented cover artist. So I'm assuming somehow that your fine art degree has helped you become as popular and as respected as a cover artist as you are within the community. So
I'm sure there are things within having gone to college that helped on the art front. Mm-hmm. I'm sure just the experience of going to college in general helped just forming myself as an adult, just
right.
Having to be solely responsible for just everything that goes on. Like no one is gonna make sure you're up. No one's gonna, that for me that actually kind of started a little bit before high school because it was just like, yeah, get yourself to school. I don't.
I'm not a taxi service.
Pretty much. Well, and when I could walk to school too, so my parents were like, you're on your own.
Yeah.
But yeah, so. I got pretty decent grades. I mean, I got good grades in school. I mean, I think I could have gone to, I don't know, I don't want to say a real college as though my college wasn't real.
Thank you.
However, I could have gone to a 4-year college, I think, right off the bat. But there was, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to get scholarships for that. I didn't have money. But it's fine because I wouldn't be who I am today had not all the events of my life taken place. So
there you go.
I can whine about it all I want, but I would not be me if things had gone some other way. So it's fine.
Good. Now, what about former jobs that you had before you became an author and a cover artist? Do you want to speak to any of those? You want to give our audience a little
Well, there was
insight?
one that I was an international spy.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay.
No. I had very boring jobs. I had a lot of retail in my 20s, in my teens and 20s. A lot of people wanting to talk to the manager. And then eventually I became the manager, and then those people yelled at me. And then I kind of moved over to like call center management. And then from there this is where the segue happened from call center management to graphics. I got hired as a call center manager at an adult toy company that sold things online and did wholesale. And so I managed their call center for a couple years, which is, I could tell you stories. I won't now, but whew. And then during that, I decided I reached a point in my life where I'm like, I don't want to be the person that gets all the angry phone calls anymore. I don't want to do it. And I don't want to be responsible for other people and when they show up and how they're performing. I just want to be responsible for me. Like I had just had enough of being in charge of people. And so a position opened up in purchasing, and it was like somewhat involved with graphics and photography. So I'm like, okay, can I get this job? And they let me move to that. And after that, I was like, I am doing graphic things. I had no more desire to, again, be responsible for the work of other people.
And working with the public in the sense, working at a call center, because I know this from my experience with having Sin worked at a call center when she first started at Blizzard Entertainment. It's just not, it is probably one of the worst jobs. And people don't realize
it's really tough. Yeah, it's really a beatdown for, hours a day, because most people don't bother calling unless there's a problem.
Right.
So already when they're calling, they're probably not in a great mood. Now, if you're lucky, you'll get someone who's polite. If you're really lucky, you'll get one of those chipper people that just really wants to work it out with you. And then, but a lot of the times you get people who are pissed and they're going to be rude to you. And then some of the people are really,
Yeah. And there's that whole sense of distance because it's over the phone.
They can't see you. So
Right.
then they can be really abusive on the phone. Yeah,
Exactly.
it gets really hectic sometimes. And
Yeah.
honestly, that's to me, I had been doing customer service type jobs for so long, I kind of expected that. But as the person being in charge, it was like, then the only calls I get were the pissed off ones. You know what I mean?
Because the call had been elevated to a manager.
Right.
Exactly. So once you segued from being the manager of the call center and you got into the graphics, and did you already have your degree at that point?
Yes.
Did that play into how you got the job?
I don't know if it played into how I got the job. I'm sure I could have pointed to that and be like, look, I have an art degree. But it was more that I was able to show them stuff I had, like practical stuff. Like I had a portfolio of things I was able to show them.
Okay.
Which is probably more what led them to allow me to move over to that position.
Okay.
I did have the degree already. I finished it right before we moved to Arizona the first time. I'm actually thinking it was about a month and a half later after I got the degree that we moved. So
okay.
Do not move to Phoenix in July. Don't do it.
Yeah, I cannot imagine. That's the worst time of the year to move to Phoenix.
Well, we moved here in August, so.
Oh my gosh.
I can never move in like December or sometime.
I was just going to say, you could not pick like.
We moved back to California in December. I'm like, could we not have done this to the hot place anyway?
Yes, exactly. So that's a little bit about your schooling, about you growing up in Southern California and the jobs that you had. Let's talk about what we really want to get to, which is when did you become an author? And first, tell us a little bit about how you became an author. What prompted you? What was the catalyst?
I woke up one day with existential angst. No, it's stupid stuff. Honestly, like this was not a career I ever anticipated for myself. I never was like, I want to be an author and all this customer service is just, what I'm doing in the meantime until one day I'm an author. I never honestly even gave it two thoughts. Briefly, maybe in high school, I was like, I'd really like to write books. But then I'd look at my favorite books, which were like, huge fantasy books that are 500 pages each. I'm like, I'm never going to put that many words next to each other. Like, just forget it. There's no possible way. So it was not something I even entertained.
Okay.
I feel like this kind of came into my mind during the time I was working at the adult toy place. Two things happened. One, for a few years already, I had been a reader on Literotica because, look, we like the pervy reading material. That's why we're here. That's why we're running the Not Safe for Work Romance podcast. So I would read stuff on there. And I remember there was one story on there. And looking back on it now, is it the greatest story? No. But at the time, I was like super struck by this story. I was really into it. I read it like 2 or 3 times, which for me is a lot. I usually don't reread things. I just don't have time. I feel like there's a million things to read. I got to get to the next one.
Right.
So I was super into it. And that was kind of looming in the background. And then also at that time, 50 Shades was at the height of its like craziness. You know what I mean? Yeah. And because I worked for a company that sold adult novelties, we had a lot of other related stuff. We did have some books. And so the owner of the company was like, we're going to sell these because we're going to ride the wave of them being sold and everything. Sure. So it came through the purchasing department when all the new products came right through my desk. So I had a copy. I'm like, okay, everybody's talking about this. I'm going to look at this book. I read, I don't know, like the first chapter or so. It wasn't for me. Let's just put it that way. I was not feeling that author's voice. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying anyone's bad for reading it. It just was not for me to like, I was just like, this isn't capturing me. I skimmed, I checked out a couple of the sex scenes, like spot check, see if I could find. And again, the style wasn't for me. But between that and then having that one kind of recent thing that I had read on Literotica, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to try to write something. I'm like, if this is selling 1 million copies, I could do at least this good. Like my horrible grammar as I'm off the clock. God damn it. Anyway, sometimes I think I worry that when people hear me talk that they don't think I wrote my books because sometimes I feel like all the words just go somewhere else when I'm talking to people.
That's okay. No,
I'm sure everybody does that, but
right. I was just going to say, it's one thing to be talking organically with each other. It's another thing when you're writing, because you can stop and think
you've got
about
time to, have a vocabulary.
and you can go back and correct things.
Right.
They call that editing, and we can't edit our
Hey,
conversation.
what is this now? Hang on, I must take some notes.
That was me being a dick.
I know I'm being a smartass. But yeah, I was like, screw it, I'm gonna try to write something. What the heck? And so I wrote the first version of the Eighth House and put it on. And it was like in early 2014, and put it on Literotica. I did it like in 3 chapters, but I had the whole thing done because I would see people get yelled at for not having the whole thing done. And I was like, whatever, I'll put this out here, and probably everybody will tell me it sucks, and whatever. It was fun. I wrote this. Woohoo. And I put it out there, and it was way more well received than I would have expected. I wouldn't have thought anybody would have cared, honestly. I was just like, whatever. They have like a voting thing on there, like you can, 5 stars, like a lot of things. The month that it was on there, it was the highest rated thing on the site. Like they get around to giving, like you win money, and they're really backlogged. But I remember it was like months and months later, I got you won the thing, like, and they sent me $150. That was the first money I made off anything I wrote.
That's awesome.
But once it was out there, it was like the floodgates are open now. I'm like, well, now I have another idea for a story, and then there's no end to it.
Okay, so you did. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to write this one story, and then that's the end of it. I'll never write any. Did you, in fact, go, wow, this opened up a world to me? Because you had said earlier that it wasn't something you ever contemplated before. And then did the story start flowing at that point?
It was like I realized I was capable of, in fact, doing the thing I didn't think I could do, which was, putting that many words together in one spot. I didn't think I could do it. And so I was like, well, what about this? What about that? And then, I wrote a second thing. And during that time, made friends with a lot of people who are, authors,
right,
that are our friends. And some of them were already kind of poking into the idea of self-publishing. And so there, we would meet up on social media and discuss stuff like that. So I had other people to ask questions, and a lot of people were like, it's not that hard. You can, it's not that hard. They say it's not that it's not work, but if you're diligent and are willing to read instructions, you can self-publish something. So I was just like, well, okay, this thing is long enough. I could maybe put this out. What the heck? How's it going to hurt? I can make my own cover. I'm a graphic designer, so.
And I know this from having talked to other authors, and I feel no compunction about not saying this. There were other authors, and well-established, and in our community, at least well-known authors, that were telling you, hey, you're good. You have a real voice. They were pushing you to publish.
Pushing me?
Right. Yeah. And rightfully so. That's the story that I've heard.
Huh.
They were advising.
Okay, and you're probably right. Let me say something that is just a thing I'm going to put out there for the entirety of us doing this podcast. I have the memory of it's like a Swiss cheese, man. So there could be stuff that happened that.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people. I walk into the next room. I'm just like, yep, got to go back. Don't know what I'm doing in here.
No,
I mean, there were definitely some people who were my friends that were like, you could absolutely do this. You are capable of doing this.
And that's what I'm saying. And they were telling you can do this because you have the talent to do it. I know I've been on Literotica now that once I was introduced to it. And there are some incredible stories. And then there are some stories that obviously.
Well, it's a free site. Anybody can put up anything.
Right. And God bless people for going on there and putting themselves out there. But not everyone who writes on Literotica or any of the other free sites, adult fiction,
Fiction Press,
not everyone.
Archive of Our Own, if you're doing fanfic.
Thank you. There's another one, Archive of Our Own. Not everyone who writes or puts a story on there is someone that you're going to find the next day on Amazon. I mean, that's not to say that they shouldn't try, but one of the things that we all know is that you have to work at this craft. It's not something that just comes to everyone, or that you open a book and you say, okay, well, I'm going to read this book and close it and say, now I can write. I'm a publisher.
Right now I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's not like when I wrote the first thing I wrote, I knew what I was doing. I was doing my best. And I think for a first thing, it was pretty okay.
Well,
it was pretty good for Literotica.
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to say, it had to have been, if you were number one on Literotica, you got paid for it. And other readers and authors out there recognized your talent and said, you should do something.
You're fluffing my ego so hard.
Well, I'm not. At least I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to.
No, I don't mean you're being like, false about it. I just mean like I'm over here. I'm just letting you know it's getting large.
Well, it's true.
I do need to get out of this room when we're done with this podcast. My head is going to have to fit through the door.
Oh my God, stop. It's just, that's the story that I've heard. That's the narrative that has been told to me.
If other people said that, then that makes me feel even better. I'm like, hey, people thought I was cool. Yay, me.
Yep, exactly. So where do you see yourself, now that you are a published author, a respected author,
people, some people.
Stop. We are not going to have a discussion about Goodreads and reviews.
For those of you who don't know, Shane has constantly got to correct me from the self-deprecating comments, because that is my default response when anybody says anything nice about me.
It is.
I need therapy anyway.
And it's very hypocritical of me to be doing that.
Yeah, we both have that disease, man. We're gonna have to prop each other up.
Exactly. It is because it is my default response too. But that being said, you're a respected author. You have a well-established following. People, and I include myself in that group, wait with bated breath for what you're going to release next.
No pressure.
And yeah, no pressure, right? No pressure whatsoever. But honestly, where do you see yourself now in the future going as an author? I mean, I guess my question would be, do you have all of these stories that you're just, I want to tell, I just, it's one of those things where I just don't have the time to do it, or it's my style as an author is to go slow, and which is fine. I mean, believe me, you and I have had conversations where I've said, don't rush, even though out of the other side of my mouth, I'm going, how much longer is it going to be?
Right. Listen, I'm asking myself that question.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But seriously though, where do you see yourself? I mean, from where you've come to where you are now, now looking forward, what do you see in your future?
Well, I have been making book covers, and a little while back, a few weeks ago, I did send out an email to my cover clients who were kind of current, just letting people know I'm not going to be doing that after the end of this year. So at the end of 2020, I'm not taking any new cover series. And, I'm still going to keep up with people who have already started making books for, if they've already got 3 books out in a series, I'm not going to just, jilt them at the altar and they got to go find someone else and their next book isn't going to look the same. I'm going to finish that for people. But as I'm segueing out of making the book covers, and I'm doing this to allow myself to have more time, I'm going to dig a bunker under my house, and I'm never going to come out until I write all these fucking books. I'm being a little bit ridiculous, but that's how I feel a lot. I very frequently am like, if everything could just minutia. I'm like, do I have to eat and clean the house and shower and do all this crap? Can I just write? Right. And I think some of that is also just because I'm a slow writer. I hear people talk about, I wrote, 5,000 words the other day. And I'm like, I'm happy for you. That all 5,000 words in a day is I didn't come out of a room for 16 hours and didn't eat. You know what I mean? That's never happens. I'm going to get about, at a good clip where I'm not getting hung up on anything, I'm going to get about 500 words an hour. And for everybody, the grand scheme of things, that's pretty slow. I take a very long time. So, I mean, where I see myself is just getting more time for myself by not doing the book covers, getting away from that. So I have more time so I can get some of these stories out, because I can't tell you how many of them are on my to be written list, but I would easily say there's 10 books I could easily make a list of 10 books right now that have been on the list and have been on the list for years. Yeah. And it's probably more books than that. And I just want to write the stories.
I know. Okay. That is something I feel to my soul is that you just want to write the stories. And sometimes there are not enough hours in the day, right?
There aren't. And I am one of those people, I can't be distracted, which is why I write, when everyone else is asleep a lot of the time, or I have to lock myself in a room.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to say, you're like, where do you see yourself? I was having this thought the other day, and it's probably a good place to put this, because I was kind of complaining about the fact that I write in a lot of different genres. I mean, most of them are romance, but they're different settings. There we go, settings. I've got sci-fi, I've got fantasy, I've got a contemporary, I've got dystopian. It's like, it's a lot. And they usually advise you to not do that, but it's what I'm doing.
Right.
But the other day I kind of had I don't know, an epiphany. That's not really the word I want to use, but I just kind of resolved myself that I'm like, look, this is the kind of writer I am. I skip around. I mean, I do have thematic elements that are the same in a lot of my books. And what I just decided that, like, what I need to do is write what I want to write and be trying to put myself out there for people who like my voice and they're interested to see what else could I tackle. There's people that one of my favorite compliments is, you gave one to me, but the similar ones I've heard, I didn't think I wanted to ever read anything else about vampires again. I don't want to hear about vampires. Or somebody, I didn't think I liked pirates, and then I read your book and I liked that one. You know what I mean? Or stuff like that. So I feel more content with myself that I write in different settings, and hopefully I'll just be able to put myself in front of people who are interested in my voice and my themes over, I have to read a sci-fi or I have to read a contemporary.
Right. And I think you've proven that you can do that. You are not an author that I think has to be constrained. I shouldn't say constrained, but a lot of people will advise you, you've got to write to market. Do the research and find out what's the most popular trope or genre right now and write to that. You've been successful in doing what you've done. And you're right. You have, you've crossed a lot of different boundaries. And I was one of those readers, because that's what I started as, and what I still consider myself a lot of the time is a reader. And vampire. I mean, that Nova was just like, that story was one of those stories like, I'm never going to really enjoy this.
I get it, because vampires have been done to death, right? I mean, sorry, the stupid vampire kind of pun, but.
Well, yeah, but it's just a genre that I really thought I would never have any interest in. Then you wrote that story. And there have been a few other authors that I've now had to backtrack away from that and say, okay, so maybe there are some vampire stories that I would enjoy. But I was coming into it with a bias, all right?
Right. And I'm sure there's authors, even within our circles of people that we talk to all the time, I'm sure there's someone out there that has written a mafia romance that could make me go, okay, I liked that one.
Yeah.
There was a whole discussion we were having the other day, and somebody was talking about an author who writes mafia romance or had a book, and they said their teenager saw the book and they're like, why would anybody want to read about mafia? That's dumb, or whatever. I forget what they exactly said. Yeah, and I chimed in. I'm like, I actually also don't care for the mafia genre, and there was a whole discussion about why. But I'm sure there's someone who's written some awesome story that if I read it, I would be like, okay, I like that one because you did a good job writing it. But right. I would very much go into it biased, being like, ugh, I hate this genre.
Exactly. And I'll admit that's the way I approached. It was V is for Vampire, right?
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, at the beginning there, I was drawing a blank on the name, and I was like, how could I do that?
That's okay.
But yeah, that was a story, I will admit, that I kind of went into with a little bit of a bias and said, wow, I don't know if I'm going to really enjoy this one. And then I started reading it, and I was like, oh my God, I love this. The characterization, the setting, the plot. There were parts of that where I really was like, this is unlike any vampire story I've ever read. And I loved it.
That makes me really happy. That whole universe was born out of a discussion at like a greasy local hamburger shop in where we used to live with me and my husband. And I said, I would love to write vampires, but everybody's done it to death. I'm like, how could I write vampires in not a common way that everybody's done? I'm like, people have done this historical period. They've done that. And I was like, I got to do sci-fi. We jokingly were like, vampires in space, man. And then like, No, really. And then it just became a whole universe. Because the rest of the series, as I write it, a lot of it is taking place off planet. So, anyway, enough about that. But yeah, that's where that entire
Spoiler.
thing, that concept came from, was how can I write this in some way that has not been done to death? But I'm sure somebody else has written science fiction vampires. I'm sure they have.
Well, I'm sure, but that particular story, I will say, it grabbed my attention, and it brought me into a genre that I had previously swore, oh no, that's not my thing. I just really
It's kind of like cyberpunk, right? I don't know. I'm
yeah,
really
it
bad
is.
at categorizing stuff. I realized that it fit into that when I was looking for keywords on Amazon. So, bad author.
No, but it is. It has a very cyberpunk, almost Snow Crash, Neil Stephenson kind of feel to it. It's not super high tech Star Wars kind of space opera, nor is it what would be another wave, another genre or trope. It's none of the
It's not like all the cyborg stuff.
Yeah, or dystopian. It's not.
It kind of is dystopian. I just don't know that it's such just a novella, and it was part of an anthology, so it was really just, centered around the sex scenes, quite frankly. But in my head, the universe exists, and it's pretty dystopian in my head because I know all the other information. I don't get into a lot of it in the novella. All you really know, well, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but you know what you know about the vampires and where they're situated, and that something is not right. Yeah. We'll put it that way.
And a little bit of their backstory and their history comes out. So it as a reader, it didn't read quite as dystopian as I'm now understanding.
It's not like I think a lot of dystopias, it's not a filthy dystopia. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like a lot of dystopian stories, I think there's an expectation that everybody is kind of running around in, rags and, they're trading mustard packets as currency, and that's a dystopia, which it is. It just, this one isn't that kind of dystopia, but it still is because it's a future that things have gone awry in.
Sure. And I can accept that, but it is not, as you just said, it's not post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, it's not post-apoc. Yeah, that's a good, yeah.
Because that's, again, that's the way I think of dystopia, is that a lot of it tends to be very post-apocalyptic, and it wasn't that.
Were you writing something that was kind of dystopia, or is it just completely sci-fi? I read a sample of it.
It is completely sci-fi.
Okay.
It is not, I do not think, to the best of my knowledge, I've ever written anything that is post-apocalyptic. I won't say that someone might not say, well, that would be a little dystopian, but it's not something that I have intentionally done. So
let us talk about some of the things you are writing. And in fact, let us talk about you, Mr. Shane. I feel like I'm sucking all the air out of the room.
No, you're not.
Which I guess that doesn't impact you, so I don't have to worry about it. You're like, I got all the air I need. Well, I don't know. It's a bit on fire where you are, unfortunately.
Yeah, it has been.
That's a terrible situation. I will not delve into it now, but it's very bad.
Yeah, it is. So, about me.
Yes, about you.
What would you like to know?
I would like to know, well, some of my questions are similar, but I know you're going to have different answers. Because I would like to know how because I'm aware, I've heard of, I know what job you're doing. I know some past jobs that you've told me about, how you were in those kind of very jobs that they were not related to writing or necessarily being super creative type jobs. How did you land on writing?
Well, okay. I have always written. I just never wrote for anyone but myself until I married Cynthia. I wrote in high school. I wrote in grammar school. My mom has got like a whole cardboard box full of my writing, and she's will always, kind of, I don't want to say lord it over me, but she's always brings it up. You were always writing, and I was a very nerdy, socially hard young man, and I wrote to get the stories that were in my head my head. Not that they ever went away. And then when, I did not go in it's funny because when I did go into college, I didn't go into that kind of creative field. It's completely different, which was theater. But in college, I was writing because by then I had met Cynthia and I was writing stories for Cynthia. So I'm one of those people that can say, well, because but I just to myself because I definitely and still suffer a huge amount of imposter syndrome. So I really wasn't writing for anyone other than myself. I did not share outside of having to do it in school. I did not share my writing with anyone else because I suffered from, like a lot of authors, um, a sense of imposter syndrome, or maybe imposter syndrome is not the best way to describe it back then. I just didn't feel that my writing was worthy of being read by anyone else. And I have to admit, I have always written, if you don't want to call it erotic, I have written stories where there have been sexual elements.
Okay.
It's just the kinds of things that I wrote about.
Well, yeah, and which in school is likely to like create
Yes.
a huge problem. Like, good grief.
Exactly. So I always had, especially in high school,
Right.
when I was taking English and
Teenagers are not kind to each other.
Yeah, and not only that, but you can't really give that kind of thing to your English teacher.
No, and if your English teacher is happily receiving it, that's a whole different problem.
Right.
You report it to the district.
Exactly. So I kept that stuff to myself, and I wrote stories that I knew. I wrote to what is the term? I used it here just a little while ago. I wrote to market when I was in high school.
Okay.
But once I got to college, I felt free enough to try writing other things, especially when I had to take English classes, and I did take several creative writing classes, and some of it was at least accepted. I won't say it was well received, but it was accepted. But I still did not feel like I was a writer. So I then pursued a different path, which was to go into theater. And I got my degree in theater, and I met Cynthia, and I started writing stories for Cynthia. And
so you guys met in college?
Yes, we met in college.
That's cute.
That's where she was taking a introduction to technical theater class. And at that time I was in my fourth year, and I was running the scene shop. And so
what is technical theater? Like
technical theater is all the back stage stuff, lighting, sound.
It's so weird how much we have in common with you. Because in school, I was on stage. I was one of those people.
Oh, okay.
But my husband in college was doing lighting.
Ah, right.
But we weren't together then. Okay. But it's just weird how we have things in common.
Yeah, it's still an artistic endeavor, and that is one thing I've noticed. It seems like a lot of other authors and people that I've met and associated with have those kinds of backgrounds, and a lot of them didn't start writing. It's just something that evolved, or if they did writing, it was something that was strictly for themselves, or they didn't see it as a career path. I got into technical theater because I thought I was going to be a technical director for a theater at some place, somewhere. At some point, I was in the IATSE local there in Reno. As I worked as a stagehand for 10 years, and I was writing all the time. And when I met Cynthia, and when Cynthia and I got married, I was writing erotic stories.
Do you have all that stuff hoarded away somewhere?
I have some of it. Cynthia has letters that I wrote her when she was in field school.
Aww.
And some of it we have lost. A lot of it was written, of course, before personal computers were a big thing. I mean, I remember I was actually out of college, or no, I was in my final year of college when we got our first personal computer, which was a Macintosh. And a lot of that stuff we lost over the years.
How is that possible? You're like 26 years old, right?
Yeah, exactly. 26 years old. No, I'm an old man.
Oh, geez.
No, it just, again, and a lot of it was because once I wrote the story and I shared it with her, and I kind of like, he.
Yeah, and you guys had fun together with the idea, whatever.
Right. Then it got filed away. And so over the years, even though she was pressing me all the time, you're a good writer, you should really look into trying to get your stories published, or talk to somebody, or take more classes. I was like, no. This is not good writing.
And she knew what was in there. She knew what was going on.
Yeah, she did. And
she's very observant.
I've had to admit that, and I have been very open about admitting that she was right and I was wrong. And I'm a very arrogant and egotistical
This will be recorded, so she'll be able to like replay that soundbite just over and over again.
Yeah, great.
A gift to your wife.
That's exactly what I need right now. No.
It'll be our ringtone for you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. Thank you. Can we cut that part out?
Okay.
No. So I was writing. I've always been, and I think I said this the other day. Somebody asked a very similar question. I said, I've always been a Walter Mitty, which I know is maybe a reference that is not as well known today as it was.
I think you're being saved by the fact that there was that remake of Walter Mitty with Ben Stiller a few years ago.
That's
so
right.
Probably an additional generation of people are now aware of Walter Mitty.
Well, that's who I've always been. I've always placed myself in stories. I've always written stories. I've always had these ideas. I'm one of these kinds of people, as I've said, I'll walk down the aisle of Albertsons and I'll have this scene come to me and I'll be like, oh, okay, well, this is really not the place I should be having this thought right now, but I'm going to roll with it. And that's just who I am. I never did pursue trying to see if there was any possibility of me getting, because at that time, I think it would have been mostly more traditional type of publishing where you find an agent and you try to get published. I know
because there weren't options.
Right. There was no Amazon.
Or you would go to like a rip-off vanity press that would charge you like way too much, and you'd have to buy like 100 of your own books and they just sit in your house and you don't have any idea how to pitch them to people. Like,
right, exactly. Or you tried to get published in a magazine.
Yeah, the magazine.
That was the big route, was to find a little boutique magazine and get published in that way. I just never pursued that. I was
like, what magazines are going to put my dirty stuff in them? Dear Penthouse Forum, like, really? Come on.
And that was the other thing too. I kept saying to Cynthia, nobody's going to want to read my stuff because it's. And back then it was smut. It's smut, and she's like, you don't know that. And she was always trying to point me out to these books. Look at this and look at this, and I was like, no. I just didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear it.
How lucky are you to have a spouse that's coming to you with sex scenes in books? Like, hey, like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a fair statement, and I hadn't actually thought about too much, but yeah, it was true. She always has been. She's always been very open about that kind of thing, and she's been very open about telling me what she likes and why she liked certain things that I wrote. I really like this. This was very well written and exciting or arousing or whatever. And so then I would go, oh, okay, well then I'm putting more of that in the next story.
Nice. You're like, yeah, approval, yes. Right, approval from the person I care most about.
And who I was writing.
There's no greater drug.
My audience. So in that sense, I was writing to market. But she pushed me and pushed me and pushed me. And I pushed back. And what I did do, I didn't end up becoming a technical director. Theater is one of those things where you have to struggle for years and years and years. It's like a lot of artistic endeavors,
or have to know people.
Yeah, right. That's a really good point. You can work through the union, and you can become a stagehand and work your way up the ranks that way. But it takes a long, long time. It's a very competitive field.
And in the meanwhile, you're trying to, eat food.
Well, yes, exactly. So that is actually the catalyst for why I didn't end up going into theater. Is I was accepted to Temple University for my master's program. We flew out there. We found a place where we were going to live. And lo and behold, because of all the naughty stories I was writing, Cynthia got pregnant.
Good times were had by all.
Yes, good times were had by all on many occasions. And so I gave that up. I said, no, I'm not going to put my family through living in student housing in Philadelphia at Temple University. So I pulled the plug on that, and I went and I started working as much as I could through the union. And through that, I found this company that was in Carson City, Nevada, that built scenery for rock and roll bands and trade show exhibits.
Okay.
Long story short, that was my career switch. And I stayed in that field and am still in that field for 25 plus years.
And I think a lot of us make those decisions. Yeah. Like that. I mean, it's like I had an art degree and I was like, okay, but I have to eat food. So I'm going to do this other thing now. And you just get on that groove of, okay, well, this is what I'm doing. And then you get a promotion, you get another promotion, and you're just, down the path.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but even though I did get the art degree, and I paid for, other than the first semester of college, and it was a junior college, so this was not a lot of money. But other than the first semester, I paid for the rest of my college. Like my dad paid for one semester.
Oh yeah.
But in my family, it was impressed upon me that, creative type careers were like, okay, but if you're going to be someone's trophy wife, you could have that job. Right. But you're not, so you need to, my family are very, independent people, and they encouraged me to be that way. Like, it was always put upon me, you need to be able to pay your own way in the world. You cannot rely on a spouse or another person. Like, you must be able to support yourself. And, in conjunction with that, it was there that, it's all well and good that you're good at art, but you need to have a job that makes money.
A real job. Did you ever get that? You need to have a real
Nobody
job.
ever said it in those words. I think they were savvy enough to know that if they said it in that tone, I would probably rebel.
Oh.
You know what I mean? But they're very, my family's very practical. Like I don't want to say I'm the only creative person. There's some other folks that can have some artistic stuff. But other than that, I am the only one I'm trying to think of everyone else. I think I'm the only one making a living like this. Yeah. I mean, my family has got engineers and mechanics and people in construction, stuff like that. Like this, yeah. I am a weird person in my family. So, but for a long time, I had practical jobs because I'm like, look, I have to eat. I have an apartment. I got to pay rent. Like I can't just hope I can find some job with my fine art degree.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm a really good oil painter. And I think had I been a really good oil painter, if I was 15 years younger, I probably could have made a go of it because we would have had social media and I would have been able to kind of pimp my wares to a much larger audience. Whereas just by myself in the year 2003 or something, I don't remember what it was, I had no way to show anybody but the people in my immediate vicinity, Right. Anyway, blah, blah, blah.
No, it's true. I went a different route, knowing ahead of time that my father was not going to pay for my college if I didn't go into science, engineering,
a STEM degree.
So I knew that. So I went off and did an end run around him and joined the Army. So I spent 4 years in the Army and accumulated all of my college money through what was then known as the Army College Fund, which was at that time, they matched I think it was every dollar I put in, every dollar I put in, they matched it with $2. And I busted my ass, and I accumulated more than enough money at the time, I felt, to put myself through college on my dime. And that was something my father was so angry with me, because my father...
Because you went over his head. You circumvented what he thought he was pigeonholing you into.
Well, and not only that, I did it by joining the Army.
And I don't mean this to disparage your father.
No, believe me, please.
I don't know the man. You have your relationship with him. I just, for that particular scenario is all I'm saying.
Yeah, but it's true. It's absolutely true, exactly what you said. And not only that, but he was a Korean War veteran, and he was drafted. So it wasn't.
Oh, okay. So it was a really sore spot for him.
Oh my gosh, he was just livid. But he had no choice, because I was an adult.
Right.
And, I went and did it. And then I went to school, and I got my degree, my BFA in technical theater. Now, by the time I was done, and later on in life, when he saw the career path that I took, he was fine with it. But at the time, he was constantly telling me, "Oh, you're throwing your life away, you're throwing your money away," because he just did not believe in that sort of thing. He was a firm believer that you went into fields where you would make money.
Yeah.
And to him, that was, what we talked about. It was STEM, basically STEM.
Like looking for a practical job is what,
right.
I was just having this discussion with my husband the other day of, I'm like stuttering here, folks from that generation, because I was talking about my grandfather. It is like the motivation behind that stuff. I really think that inside that these people loved us, and they knew that the world was tough out there, and they wanted us to be prepared, because they wanted us to be able to live a good life. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And be able to eat and have a house and care for our families or whoever we end up, living with, whatever. And I know that's the motivation, is they wanted good things for us, but then, it was not the most introspective of generations. There was not a lot of navel gazing. And so there was no kind of examining what would be the best way to make my, offspring understand this. It was just like, you need to do this or you're an idiot. You know what I mean? Right. Like there was a lot of that way of enforcing it. Like the motivation was love, but the way it came off was like,
yeah, it was.
You're useless. You need to do this. Blah, blah, blah. Like I'm right. You're wrong. All this stuff. And
it was tough love.
Yeah.
My father was a huge advocate and believer in that sort of way of handling things. It was, I love you and I care about you, so I'm going to protect you from yourself by telling you that what you're doing.
He didn't want to, like, they don't want to make you soft because they know the world is hard and they don't want you to get hurt is really the motivation. But the way a lot of people went about it was pretty hard on a lot of folks.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And my father and I did have a very contentious relationship. But I did, in fact, graduate. I did, in fact, marry Cynthia. I started down the career path, and
at some point,
I did. I excelled at it.
No, but so you were doing all this other career in the the trade show and other kind of big display presentation industry. Right. At what point did you go, I'm going to write something and show it to people?
Okay, so
and more people than just your wife.
Right. Okay, so the funny story about that is that I moved out of the shop eventually and into the front office.
Oh, okay.
And I was a
big man now.
Yeah. I was a CAD draftsman, I was a CAD monkey for a number of years. And then I moved into estimating and project management. And as an estimator in a project, especially as an estimator, I had to write a lot of descriptive language for describing how things were going to be built and what our clients were going to be.
At no point did you have to contemplate multiple synonyms for penis, did you?
No, that was not.
You're like, well, some people I worked with, I kind of had to think about calling them those names. Anyway.
Yeah, this is true. But that would have been an HR nightmare.
Yeah.
But I started. I was really, honestly, in some capacity, it was helping me evolve as a writer, because I was having to do it all the time, and I was learning how to craft language that made people understand what it was that they were going to be getting, in sometimes in very simplistic terms. So I'm still writing for Cynthia all the time, and she's still at me all the time. But during that time period, things changed in the publishing world. So we did have things like Amazon, and we started having sites like Literotica. And she's like, "Well, you should put your stuff up on Literotica or adult fan fiction or whatever." And I was like, "No, it's crap. I'm not going to do that."
You never put anything on Lit or nowhere like that?
No, no, I did not.
I don't know why. I didn't think you had. I figured you would have told me if you had, but for some reason I'm like, really? Okay.
Nope.
All right.
I never did. So what happened is I started to realize that, and I can't really pinpoint exactly when it was, but I started to realize that there were other people out there that were writing in romance that was dark. And that's the kind of writing that I always gravitated to in my personal writing. So my mom was a huge romance reader, but more of the traditional,
the Harlequin romances and stuff.
Harlequin, yeah, exactly. And I read some of those. In fact, I read quite a bit of them, but they weren't what I was writing. So it wasn't.
Yeah, a lot of those are more, I don't know what, fun and cute in tone. Yes, they're not that heavy.
Or the sex happens off screen in a lot of them.
Okay. I have honestly never read a whole one all the way through. My grandma had a ton of them around. I remember being a youngster and kind of picking them up. I don't remember if I ever got so far as any of the sex parts. I would start reading them, and it just, I started reading either dark books or I was reading Stephen King in like the 3rd grade. Okay. So it's like I was gravitating towards books with heavy, serious plot lines. So I'd be, 10 pages in, and I'm like, I don't care what this cowboy in Montana on his ranch is doing. This is boring. No one has any swords. There's no magic. There's no evil wizard. What the hell is going on here? And I just got bored, and I just didn't bother, I guess. I never got far enough to see any of the sex scenes or lack thereof, I don't think.
Well, yeah, in some cases, it was, again, the lack thereof in the sense that they weren't explicit. A lot of it was being done off screen, or it was couched in such flowery language,
right,
that you really never felt the intensity of emotion. It was just like, oh yeah, okay, I get it.
Because they're trying to be careful. They're trying to they're trying not to be that book that you have to buy behind the counter. That's
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like they're trying to keep it within. We could make a whole episode of that, but the entire history of distributing like adult literature in this country is just bananas. So.
It is.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
It absolutely is. So, long story short, the industry evolved, and Cynthia was pointing out to me, not that she was pointing out necessarily indie publishing, although that did come up. But she was pointing out there's all of these sites, and you could be putting your work in front of people and letting them see it. And what she was really hoping for was that I would do that, and then someone would say, much like what happened with you, as I understand it, oh, hey, you're a really good writer. Oh, I love your stuff. But I refuse to do it.
Someone outside of her would say that, because I bet, because you're Mr. like self-effacing, that probably every time she told you you're good, you're like, you're like, even though you're like, okay, but in your head, you're like, she's my wife and she loves me and she has to say that. Well, like, she's not going to tell me it's crappy if it's crappy, because, she's not going to hurt my feelings.
Right. And honestly, I'm
surprised you didn't, though. All those, they're so anonymous, those sites. Like, you just make up, you don't have to put your picture, you just make up some weird ass name and.
No, but I would know. And that's still part of what was my hand.
You don't have to email it to your coworkers, man.
I know. But I was point blank telling her that, no, you're biased. You because a lot of the times she knew the stories were about her. And so I would be like, you're biased because you know that I wrote you into this story, or whatever. And so you're not a uh, unbiased observer. And so she would go, okay, whatever you say. And I would end up, I just kept writing for her, but nothing came of it. However, I found the dark romance community. This has probably been 4 years ago now. And I started because those were the stories that I wrote myself and I was gravitating towards dark romance and BDSM. And so I started reading these stories and I found a group of authors, which included Addison Kane, Jennifer Benet, myself, Carrie Silverwood, um, uh, Zoe Blake, Olivia Grant. I found these authors and I started then, because of course by now the internet's a thing, Facebook is a thing. I start looking them up and reading them. And not to pick one author out, but I'm going to because it's the truth. Jennifer Benet had written this series of stories called the Thalia series. And
yes,
I read it and I was just like, this is what I want to write. And so I did. I wrote a fanfic. And
why the heck not?
Well, and I had written other fanfics. I wrote a Jacqueline Carey fanfic from Kushil's Dark.
I mean, the first thing I wrote has to kind of count as a fanfic, right? It's kind of a redo.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, the eighth house, Hades and Persephone. I mean, it's the mythology's there. I don't know if it counts as a fanfic or a retelling, but it's fanfic. It basically is.
Yeah, it's a retelling at the very.
I'm sure Homer's like, yeah, thanks, big pervert. All those old poets were pervs. Don't even.
Oh,
anyway.
yeah. Oh,
so you wrote a fanfic of Jennifer Benet's in her universe.
Right, in her universe. I wrote this fanfic. And Cynthia was aware of it. And she's like, so who is this author? And so she, on her own, looked her up. And I was like, yeah, this story is just phenomenal. I wrote this fanfic and I put it away. And I was done. I was like, yeah, I finished it. It's cool. Cynthia read it. And I had actually, let me back up for 1 second. I was almost completely done with it. And one day I was stalking Jennifer Benet. I was stalking all of you guys. One day in a post, she mentioned, I'm going to, one of the stories that I've got an idea for is I'm going to take Jake, who was this character in the Thalia series, a fairly minor character, mind you, that I had written my entire fanfic about. And she says, I'm going to do this story about Jake and Beth. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Fuck it. I'm not going to finish this.
Oh,
and
I could see that though. Like I understand that thing when you hear somebody are like, oh, fuck yeah. All right.
Well, and it was no offense to her, disparagement to her or anything. I was just like, oh, there's no point in going on. She's going to write the real story.
Right. You as an insecure fanboy in that situation are just like, there's no. The actual person is doing this.
Right. So I put the story aside and Cynthia was like, no, you got to finish this. I'm like, no. And so Sin, this is an epiphany moment when Sin said, just reach out to her and ask her, is she okay with this or would she like to read it? And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then literally one night, and it had to have been like 11 o'clock my time, which I'm on West Coast time. I said, hey, just to let you know, I wrote a fanfic and, but I noticed that you're going to continue the story. So, I just, I'm not going to go on with mine, but I really loved it. I basically did like a lot of fans do. I gushed. Mm-hmm. And I didn't expect her to respond. And she did that same night while I was like,
she's a night owl. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that at the time, but she said, you did? Can I read it? And I'm like, no, you don't want to read it.
You're like, what have I done?
and she's like, no, I want to read it. Send it to me, please. And I was like, fuck it. And so I did. I sent it to her. And that next morning I told Sin, I sent, and she was ecstatic. And so I hadn't heard back from Jennifer yet, and I never expected to. In fact, I didn't hear back from her for probably a day or two. And in the meantime, Sin had sent Jennifer a message herself. I hear Shane sent you the story. Please be honest with him. Let him know what you thought. So she sends me back, Jennifer sends me back a message about a day and a half, 2 days later. This is great. I love it. And I was absolutely floored.
You're probably losing your mind. Yeah.
I did. I didn't know what to say. I was just like, you're yanking my chain, right? And she's like, no, this is really, really good. I'm loving this. And then she started quoting me back parts of the story. I was like, oh, fuck, she did read it. Or she's a hell of an actress. Because,
right. She's not shining me on.
Right. And so I was like flabbergasted. I didn't know what to do. And I said, well, I hope you enjoy it, but it's done and I'm not going to go any further with it. And she says, no, that's not acceptable. And that's where
I can completely picture her tones saying this to you.
She said, no, that's not acceptable. She said, you will finish this. And I'm like, no, there's no point. It's not my story. They're not my characters, blah, blah, blah. And that's where I've always brought this phrase up, because it was literally the phrase that kind of kicked me in the ass. She said, easy way or hard way, Shane, your choice. And I basically tried to be who I am, and I tried to call her on it. And so she outed me in her group, the Dark Haven. She outed me.
She does not play.
No, she does not. And I didn't realize that. But she said, you need to talk to, at that time, I was not using Shane Starrett. I was using my real name. And she said, you need to talk to Shane. He's written a story, and ask him about Trey, who is a character in the story. Anyways, long story short, she and Cynthia began talking, and she's the one who said, well, what is his problem? He's a great writer. He's raw. He needs work. But he's got a talent. And I was just like dumbfounded, because it literally was the first person who had ever read anything that I had written, aside from my mom, my father, and Cynthia. And she was telling me, she was actually messaging me, you've got talent, you've got a voice. That was like the term she used. You have a voice. And she said, you have to finish this. So I did. I basically serialized it.
I remember when that was coming out. I was going in and checking out the chapters.
Right. I serialized it on, I can't remember what the Weebly or some website.
I thought it was on your own blog even, no?
Oh, maybe it was. You know what?
Think
You're
so.
right. It was on a blog. Blogspot, I think.
Yeah.
So I finished it, and I was now feeling like maybe I did have a chance to do this. And I got
excited. You need to be told by someone outside yourself and outside of, your family.
Yeah.
Because you got to hear from someone that also does the thing, or they're a stranger and they have no skin in the game, and they don't care. Like, they're being honest, because it doesn't matter to them whether they tell you you're good or not.
Right. Because like you said, they got no skin in the game. There's nothing that they're going to be able to profit off of, which is, again, going back years and years. Cynthia kept pushing me to do that with an agent or something like that, because she thought, though, that'll be the person that will convince him, because I can't convince him. And so it did. It happened. And Jennifer asked me, said, well, do you have anything else that you've written? And I said, yeah, I have this story. And you know a little bit about how this all went down. I have this story that I wrote that is, I think the closest thing I've got to what I would consider a book length story. And it was called Submissive Lies. Well, actually, back then, it was called Jen's Story. And I didn't even know Jennifer at that point. It's just the name that I picked.
Right.
Because it was a play on Cynthia's name, blah, blah, blah. It was called Jen's Story. And it was very stream of consciousness, but there's a whole long story I could tell about what happened with Submissive Lies, but I won't, because it's it's convoluted. And what the bottom line was is that I was again about ready to give up because I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I had given myself or found an editor that was completely wrong for me. And I was just like done. And Cynthia was at her wit's end. She was literally crying at one point because I said, "That's it. I'm done. I'm not doing this."
It's really tough at certain stages, I think, too, because yeah, even when you have some author friends and stuff, and you have people you feel like maybe you could talk to, sometimes it just feels like there's a giant blank canvas in front of you, and you have paint, and you're just staring at it, and you're like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
Like, how do I turn this into a damn, Rembrandt? Like, it's
right.
just, I know this should become something. I don't understand how to get it there. And it's very intimidating sometimes.
It is. And not only that, writers are very much solitary. It's a solitary occupation for the most part. Yeah, we have social media that we need to engage in and all of the ancillary things. But the actual act of writing is you sitting down in front of a piece of paper or in front of a computer and putting the thoughts in your head, turning them into words on a page. And that's a solitary, like you talk about when you write, you do it late at night because you need to be in the zone. And you can't have people sitting and talking to you or chattering at
I
you.
can't even have the potential for people to start talking to me, which is why I have a hard time writing during the day. Like, my husband is in the office and I'm out of it, so theoretically I could write then, but even then I'm weird about it because at any time this is not like to disparage anything he's doing. He's fine. Like, it's just I'm being neurotic. But it's like at any time he could come out and maybe start asking me questions about something, and it's like, it's gone. All the zone is gone. So I'm weird about it. I don't know.
Yeah, it throws you completely off track, and you have to get back into the groove, and it's not something that can be done immediately. So, yeah, it was just a situation where I was ready to give up because I didn't feel like I belonged or I had the right. I was going back to basically what I had been saying for 25 years.
So there was go ahead.
I'm not good enough. This isn't going to work. And Cynthia reached out to Jennifer, and Jennifer said, "What's going on?" She talked with Cynthia. Cynthia shared part of what had been happening with the book. And Jennifer said, no. This is the wrong editor for him. I can see what's going on here. And by that time, we had a little bit of a rapport.
So you actually reached a low place that low during Submissive Lies that you were like, I'm not doing this at all?
Yeah, I was.
I didn't know that. I mean, I knew you were having a real hard time. Like, there was times when even you and I were communicating, and I was like, "Oh, what the heck is going on?" But I didn't know that there was a point where you were like almost going to throw in the towel. I did not know that.
Oh yeah. I did. In fact, I said, "I'm never working on this again." And like I said, that's when Cynthia broke down because she thought, "Oh my God, 25 years, I finally got him."
I know, right? I finally got him in the door,
and he's going to quit. And he hasn't even published a book. He's just done a fan fiction. But long story short, Cynthia and Jennifer talked me off the ledge. Jennifer was the editor for all intents and purposes on Submissive Lies. And I know she'll deny it, but she was the editor. She helped me turn the book around. She showed me some things that I needed to change. She gave my voice the polish that it needed, and to at least make it into a presentable book. And
which is just showing one of the things that is pretty awesome about the author community, at least in romance. I can't speak for other genres, is that there are plenty of people willing that are your friend. People will leap to help you. And I'm not saying like, anyone listening who's like, oh, I want to write something. Oh, good. There's people I can take advantage of. That's not what I mean. I just mean, as you make friends in the community, it's not, I mean, look, every kind of group of people, there's always going to be some people that cause problems. But for the most part, most people are like, yes, I will tell you the pitfalls and I will tell you what things to avoid and I will help you. I'll answer your questions. Like, there's plenty of people out there that are more than willing to, help you not have such a difficult time of it. And a lot of other careers, it is not that way. A lot of other industries, it's very secretive.
And
Nobody wants to tell anybody else their methods of how they did this, how they. Meanwhile, in romance, there's like, okay, we're going to get on a Zoom call, and this author is going to show you a PowerPoint of exactly how they make ads, and they're going to tell you how to make keywords for your book and blah, blah, blah. It's like, we're all like, yes, we all want to help each other. You know what I mean? And I really like that. In this industry.
Do too. And it was one of the things I never expected about once I started to get into this community and I started interacting, was that level of support flabbergasted me, because so many other industries and communities are very competitive,
right?
And all about what you can get for yourself, and to hell with the next guy. And that has not been my experience in the dark romance community.
Right. And especially, I mean, people are definitely out to like, you know, each author is like, okay, what do I do to boost sales? Like, we're definitely trying to make a living. But I don't find the cutthroatness going on of like, oh, I'm not going to tell you my secret way. Like, right. I've talked to people about how to do all kinds of stuff, and it's like, I don't care. Of course I want to help them. Why make someone's life difficult if I can make it easier?
Never at the expense of someone else. That's the thing.
Right.
All of this is never done at someone else's expense. It's like, we're here, we know, we've experienced this, we can help you, and they offer it up.
Well, I'm very glad that you did not throw in the towel.
So am I.
I mean, I had already met you by then, so at least we already got to be friends, but I'm very glad that you did not.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
It has obviously turned quite a bit around.
It did.
I saw one of the questions in your AMA. Somebody asked, after all of that, oh, I'm not worthy, I'm not that great talk, with all these authors clearly wanting to work with you, you've done co-writes with Jennifer Benet. You did another co-write with someone, didn't you?
No? We have a co-write. The science fiction book is a co-write with Rachel.
Okay, right. And then but you've also been asked to take part in anthologies. I know there's one coming in the future. You just had the Dad Bod Doms release, which is more of a series or like a franchise than an anthology, but still, you're still working with those people.
Right.
So people are always all having a stroke. People are often asking to work with you. So how are you doing on reconciling that with your attitude of, I'm not that great? I approached you saying, Shane, we should do a podcast.
I'm not at all. I'm still in denial.
You don't believe it?
Yeah, this is all just a long game scam you guys are pulling.
We've all got together in a secret cabal to like build you up. And then in like 2022, I've got it marked on the calendar, the day we're going to ruin you.
I know, you're going to crush me. It's going to be spectacular.
I'll let you know that I will never be part of something like that, because I'm never in the fucking loop on anything. Like, if there's anything going on in Authorlandia, I'm the last person to know. I'm always the person, hey, did you hear that it's already like some crazy ass thing is happening? I'm like, yeah, I didn't know that. Sorry.
Really? Yeah, exactly. It's like, what's going on? I had no idea.
I'm out of the loop, man.
Yeah. But no, honestly, that is still a big part of that whole imposter syndrome.
Does it not help at all? Like, do you not at all feel like I'm an author? Like, when you're doing all these takeovers on Facebook, do you not just be like, yes, this is me, I'm an author, here's my stuff, check it out? Like, nothing? Not even a little bit?
A little bit, maybe.
Okay.
Now, today.
It'll build up. I think it'll build up over time.
But I still think that, like, I'm that guy that they're just like, oh, patting me on the head. Oh, yeah, look, you're cute. Now run along and let the real authors talk. Let the adults talk.
I think that's a common feeling. I mean, I'm not going to say it's like ever 100% goes away, but I will say that I feel it less and less over time. Like, I feel more and more when people ask me what I do, I'm like, I'm a writer, I'm an author. Like, before I'd be like, well, like couch it in this and that. Like, you know.
I still can't do it. I still tell people I'm a project manager.
Well, but like, I wasn't telling people that until I left my day job too. So, I mean.
Yeah, there you go.
And I had to move to a very, very inexpensive part of the country to do it. So it wasn't like, I could not have done this living where I was living before. Like, it just could not, I would have been like, okay, I guess I'm going to have to sell a kidney or something. Like, it wouldn't have happened.
I'm still at that point. So, but it's difficult for me to still reconcile that. So my attitude is still to this day going to be self-deprecating and, oh, it's all going to come to an end soon enough.
The beatings will continue until morale improves, Shane.
Exactly.
We're going to continue to flog you until you just admit you're an author.
Yeah, well, I wish you all the best with that. I mean, I know someday it will.
You hear that, everyone, right?
Yeah, but we're not there yet. We're not.
I'm just putting it out there for people listening. They're going to go harass you to remind you that you're a real author.
Oh my God, I already get that.
You were I mean, how weird did it feel when you're at that book signing last year? We both attended our first book signing together. We shared a table.
I know.
I had a table, and then Shane decided like late in the game that he was going to do this book signing, which is fine. And then I think they told you to go find someone to share a table with, didn't they? They're like,
yes,
we don't
that's
have
exactly
any.
what they did. They said,
and you were saying that. I'm like, well, you share my table, dude. Like, I'm like, then we could sit together and hang out.
Talk.
And then,
right. and that's exactly what
the
I
thing happens. This guy has a fucking line, like, going away from the table. Ain't nobody coming to my half of the table. Like, Shane, who's like, oh, you're established, whatever. He's got, like, a line of fangirls. Like, you sold all your books. All of them.
Okay, but that was only because
look at the guy.
Jennifer.
He's like, oh, but he sold all of his books, people. God. I'm pounding my table as I say this.
That was only because of Jennifer and Jasmine. That.
Stop taking away. Stop diminishing.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying.
I'm going to make you do the exercise where you just have to listen to people compliment you, and you're only allowed to say thank you.
Oh, hell no.
That's it.
Hell no.
I had to do that in a Dale Carnegie class, and it was pretty hard.
Yeah, you told that story. You told that story here just recently on.
Yeah, somewhere. I don't remember.
Yeah, in a thread or something. No, it's still, I'm still not at that point yet. Someday I'm sure I will be, but I'm not there yet. I still.
In the meantime, we'll just
people
we'll get our own therapy in our podcast.
Yeah, and people will just have to keep reminding me and hoping somehow that it'll stick.
We'll make it.
Yeah. Was there anything else about my sordid life that you wanted to know?
I don't know, Shane. You're a mysterious guy. No.
Honestly, there's not a whole lot that's fascinating about my story. I
think there is. I'm kind of waffling because I'm just like, I could probably ask you a million questions and we could be here for 6 hours. You know what I mean? Like, I could ask all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and we probably should be wrapping this up for our audience because we've been going on for a while. And honestly, the important thing is that you came into this career, this industry, in a similar fashion. I took a lot longer to come into it, but I think, I don't want to speak for both of us, but I think the thing that I'm finding fascinating is that I had this deep love for writing. I had this love for dark romance.
Mm-hmm.
And I found this community, and the community was so supportive, so helpful. And here I am today as a writer
who's got books out,
with books out that people tell me they like and enjoy.
Complete strangers.
Yes, exactly. And that to me is just so empowering. It's such an empowering feeling, and it makes me want to write more.
It does. Yes, it does.
Not that I didn't love writing for Cynthia, because that had its own benefits.
Right.
Make no mistake. But this is a completely different feeling, and it is something that I cherish. And that, yeah, I've had to eat a lot of crow. I've had to eat a lot of crow with Cynthia.
It's very validating.
It is validating. And I've said, you were right. You were right. I was wrong. And now I am excited to write even more. And I know I asked you this question. What do you see for your future? I am excited about my future of being able to continue to tell the stories that I want to tell, and that there are people out there that will actually want to hear them.
I can't wait to read more stories that you write.
And I can't wait to read more stories that you write. And I can't wait.
And the circle jerk has concluded.
Right. Well, and other authors that are out there that are a part of our community that we love. I am always excited and thrilled when I see a new story come out. especially when I see one that I'm like, that resonates with me, and I gotta read it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an exciting part of this. It's me being able to be on both sides of the table now. The reader in me is loving it because I've found my tribe. I believe that's what Addison and Jennifer say a lot, that we found our tribe. And then as a writer, I'm in the same exact position because it's like, I found my tribe, people that really want to read what I've written.
Yeah, that's important. And I think part of it was like, I came to a realization that there was writing out there that was interesting to me. I did not have an interest in romance, really, period, before I started writing it, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I was sci-fi, fantasy, and then there was a great deal of nonfiction as well, a lot of history, philosophy, and stuff like that. And honestly, I did really start with erotica. But then I got more interested in the stories that were available that had more complicated plots, more things going on. And really, I was realizing, hey, a lot of these are romances, essentially.
Yeah.
But then I was realizing there are romances out there that I will be interested in and willing to read.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, I thought, oh, they're all like my grandmother's Harlequin books, and they're going to be boring, and I'm not going to care.
Exactly. Wow. Exactly the same approach and attitude that I had. And I read some of them, like I said before, from my mother. I was like, no, this isn't for me. And then I discovered this community, and I realized that there are romance stories, because erotica is erotica, and what we write is not erotica. It has erotic elements in it, but they are stories. They're stories about the human condition, about
relationships and about people interacting and psychology and stuff. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've written what I like to refer to as wank pieces. I've written plenty of those. And some of them are still on Literotica because, you can read it in 20 minutes and the whole purpose of it is for people to fuck and it's exciting and whatever.
Right.
But, the longer ones, I guess most of them classify as a romance. I'm sure there's things that don't really qualify as romance that I've written, but that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, it is. But by and large, the community that we're involved in, that's what our audience and our readers are looking for. They're not looking for just the spank bank pieces. They're looking for
they want that specific cross section. Like they want the good story and interesting plot, and they want the romance. But that cross section also does not want the sex scenes to fade to black. They want to hear all the dirty words and hear who touched who where and what parts went in and all this stuff.
And feel it and feel that connection. Okay, I think we have introduced ourselves quite well.
Yes, we have.
I can't imagine anyone not knowing probably more than they wanted to know about either one of us. Me especially.
I don't know. I haven't told anyone my cup size yet, which I've been told is a standard introduction in romance novels that I'm supposed to. Is it really? Yes. So I'm supposed to look in the mirror and I'm supposed to describe my measurements, because this is how women think about themselves.
Yeah, okay, so we're not going to do that, because there is no fucking way I'm standing in front of a mirror and trying to describe.
Here we go with the inches.
He's
going to be very modern and European and give us centimeters, and nobody's going to know what the hell he's talking about.
No, that's not happening. In centimeters, millimeters, inches. Okay. No, under no circumstances in any measurement system known to mankind. So, I think we're going to close here. I'd just like to say that you can follow us, the Not Safe for Work Romance Podcast, on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, and also on our Twitter at Romance in SFW. That's Romance in SFW, all one word. And you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All you need to do is just search for Shane Sterrett or my group on Facebook, The House of Sterrett. You can also find a vast array of my books, all 4 of them, on Amazon. They're available for Kindle, in Kindle Unlimited, and also in paperback.
And as for myself, I am also on Facebook. You can follow my fan page on there. It's under my name, Eris Adderley. Or you can join my private group, which is Eris Adderley's Home for Wayward Troublemakers. That's where I interact with people the most. I'm also on Twitter at Eris Adderley, all one word, and you can also find me on Instagram. And all my dirty books are on Amazon. Most of them are on Kindle Unlimited. Shane, shall we do this again next month?
What? Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah, we have to do it again. We have to keep making the podcast. It's not just the one podcast.
Assumed this was like a one-time thing. You know what? No. I'm not going to do this. Yes, I would love to do this again, Eris.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for being here.